Hello, my name's Toby, and welcome to a Saturday edition of Politidash, bringing you all the latest in global politics from a unique left-wing perspective. And today, I want to talk to you about the 3.5 trillion infrastructure package reconciliation bill being put forward by the Biden administration in the States and the Democratic Party, how likely it is to pass, what it means, what it's about. So let's dive in, shall we? First of all, the impetus has to be pass this thing. Pass the 3.5 trillion package. Don't cut it down further. Don't mess with it. Pass it. And what we're going to talk about now is operating on the assumption that happens, which isn't necessarily likely. But we'll take it at face value for now and say this is the proposal on the table. This is what we want to see passed through budget reconciliation, the House and the Senate. So, this is already cheese pared down. The original proposal was 6 trillion. We've had a 500 billion infrastructure deal, 1 trillion, but it's basically 500 billion new spending. That was the bipartisan effort. That was basically a slap in the face. Did nothing to do with climate change, nothing to do with human infrastructure, barely touched the sides on physical infrastructure. Obviously a nice initiative in some areas. Bits of it funneled money further to the fossil fuel industry, basically paying them for their own mistakes. But other than that, it was a damp squib of a package and a slap in the face, a ridiculous slap in the face in terms of the size of the problems ahead. Now, over 10 years, you already have the right wing, the conservative Democrats, not moderates, conservatives, right? There are no moderates, talking about, we're not going to vote for this, it's too much. The problem with that is, over 10 years, this will be a fraction of GDP. It's to be spent over 10 years. It's a fraction of GDP. It isn't enough. Nowhere near enough. We're going to be serious about the amount of money to really rejuvenate the American economy, kickstart a Green New Deal, rebuild domestic industries, strengthen the working class, tip the balance in favour of labour over capital. We're talking 12, 15 trillion, right? 15 trillion of investment in the US economy in the form of a Green New Deal over the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years. And that would be the bare minimum. We're talking about 3.5 trillion, okay? This would be exciting if we were talking about over 2 years. This is a 10-year plan, okay? This is small fry. This is a moderate package. This is a conservative package when you look at the problems facing people in America and in the global economy. It isn't enough. It will have a laughably minimal impact on inflation if it has any impact at all. Concerns about inflation are overcooked. Labour doesn't have anywhere near the bargaining power to drive up prices in the way it occurred in the 70s. That's long gone. And at the same time, you have an economy so structurally weak, the problem is actually people not having enough money to spend, not the other way round. Money isn't going to devalue itself. These are scare stories. These are ludicrous scare stories put out by dinosaurs showing themselves to be economically illiterate and stuck in an age that ended when the Ronald Reagan presidency ended, right? This is really sort of 1970s style politicking. Old solutions, been discredited time and time again, as we've seen with 40 years of neoliberal fiscal policy in the States and around the West, around the world. So this would, for all the problems with it, this would be the most progressive and long-lasting piece of legislation in terms of economic policy since the New Deal. Okay? That isn't saying much. That isn't a particularly high bar, considering the really conservative bent of US politics for as long as most of us have been alive. However, that doesn't change the fact this would be big and progressive compared to anything we've seen before, and it would be, you pass that $3.5 trillion package, that would be a real shift in the ambition of the Democratic Party compared to the Obama era. Okay, that would be a change, that would be a shift. No one could say there hasn't been a small shift leftward. The problem is, it doesn't look like we're actually going to get this thing passed. This is the only route where Democrats can win or hold on to congressional control, particularly in the House, in 2022. The only thing that will turn people out to vote for them, that will unite a class coalition of working class voters, rural, urban, white, black, degrees, lower educational achievement, all these things together, right? That coalition of working class people who share the same interests can only occur if we see real tangible gains for people, real tangible gains from democratic policy. And this would be the beginning of that. This would be a down payment on that. This is the only thing that will turn people out. This is the only thing that will give Democrats a fighting chance in 2022. Right now, Democrats are fighting with one time behind their back, considering they're not willing to use all the procedures to get things through. They're not willing to unite behind bold proposals, and they are not willing to actually tackle gerrymandering, voting rights, procedural reform, all these sort of things that would make America more progressive, that would make American policy making more progressive. There's several things you could do. Right now, if every Democrat was a progressive, what could you do? Every Democrat in Congress was a progressive, or was willing to get on board with these things, right? Okay, scrap the filibuster. You can pass what you want to pass on a straight majority line vote. You can pack the court, okay? Balance out the lunacy of conservative policy that's dominated the Supreme Court for a decade now and is set to get worse. You could, alongside that, stop partisan gerrymandering, pass really tough legislation on voting rights, maybe universal enrollment, things like that. Rejig the congressional maps. All these things you could do. If the Supreme Court's going to stop you, you've packed the Supreme Court, right? This is not that radical, okay? In a normal country, when a party takes political power, they can do these sort of things, right? In America, there are so many checks and balances, no one can get anything done. And that doesn't mean it's neutral, that doesn't mean it stays moderate. That means the extreme right holds a veto over the working class. The interests of the very wealthy hold a veto over the working class and the overwhelming majority of people living in the United States of America under the horrific system it perpetrates. So, the simple explanation there is you have to see bold action. They're working with one hand tied behind their back because they're not willing to do any of those things I've said, and they won't be for a very, very long time, if ever. And if they ever come around to it, it'll be too late. Final comment on democratic politics for today. We need a better succession plan within the party. Kamala Harris was talked up, one reason or another, during the election as, you know, a trailblazer, and obviously a trailblazer in the sense she's the first African-American woman to be elected vice president. That's a big step. But also a trailblazer in terms of being progressive and being liberal and egalitarian, right? And also talked up as sort of the heir to Obama, right? You had Obama, trailblazer, first black president with Joe Biden. Now you've got Joe Biden with trailblazer, first woman and black VP, Kamala Harris. The problem there is, politically, she's conservative, and she's shown herself, through the primary she showed this already, but also now shown herself not to be an Obama. Obama, whatever you think about him, was a master at the political game. Kamala Harris isn't. She's much less popular than the administration. She's much less popular than Barack Obama, crazily so, and less popular than President Biden. And the thing there is, if you do polls, there was a poll out over the weekend, last weekend. Kamala Harris is trailing former President Trump in general election polls. Now, okay? Think how that's going to look come 2024. There needs to be and she's leading overwhelmingly in the primary to take, you know, the Democratic Party forward if Biden doesn't run again in 2024. So I think that means two things. First of all, it means Biden's probably going to run for re-election because the Democratic sort of elites are going to say, well, we don't want a progressive, and also Kamala's going to lose it. She's going to lose the election. But it also means if Kamala Harris doesn't massively improve in terms of her political instincts, she is going to lead the Democratic Party to defeat in the White House in 2024. We're going to see, you know, if Democrats don't step up, what we're essentially going to see from here is Republican Congress in 2022, Republican President in 2024. These things are avoidable. If Democrats deliver, they can keep Congress. They can defy the odds and keep Congress. It's not rocket science. And if Democrats nominate someone committed to progressive change, or even with a semblance of political instinct, which Kamala Harris, with her visit to the border, with her primary campaign, with the way she's conducted herself so far, doesn't have, along with a very conservative record, if we don't nominate someone not like that, you're also going to see Democrats lose the presidency. These things are avoidable, but the answer to these things is not Joe Manchin in Congress, and it's not Kamala Harris in terms of the presidency. America, the Democratic Party had a chance after 2020 to reshape American politics in a progressive direction. As of right now, they are forsaking this responsibility, and they show no intention of doing anything, in fact, quite the opposite. And in the words of Nancy Pelosi, we are heading for a very strong Republican Party.